Hare Krishna, all glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda, all glories to the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and all glories to the assembled devotees who are here today at the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam class of the Prabhupada Disciples Association. These classes are being held in order to provide association with other like-minded devotees. This is a dovetailing of technology in the service of Krishna. And in this way, we're hoping to proliferate the process of bhakti yoga to other sincere people. This process is based on self-discipline. The self-discipline of the individual devotee enables them to develop their transcendental vision. And by the potency of the individuals in this group and their commitment to the process of devotional service, they're able to infect other people in a positive way to take up this discipline of Krishna consciousness. It's we are all insignificant in this universe. There are billions and billions and billions of living entities. Even on this planet, there are so many billions of people. And then, therefore, it's a very rare opportunity for anyone to take up the process, to actually understand what the purpose of life is. If you connect the dots in spiritual life, it takes a lot of dots to connect them to solve the puzzle. And in this particular case, we're very fortunate that we have association of a pure devotee, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, his journey from India to America, his starting of his mission here in the West, the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya, the proliferation of his movement to become a successful arm of the mission of Lord Chaitanya, and the attraction of so many people initially into the mission. And even now in the year 2022, so much has come about as a result of his work. All kinds of people taking up Krishna consciousness, taking up the process of devotional service, and making an effort, individual effort, to make themselves more qualified through their personal efforts to represent the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya. So it's a very exciting mission and a very exciting process for each of us individually. And these classes that we're holding are based on the principle of Guru Shastra Sadhu, where you have the spiritual master, you have his scriptures, and then you have the assemble of devotees, sadhu, people that are committed to the process, and they work together to try to understand how to better effectively bring Krishna consciousness into their personal life. And then subsequently in your particular areas, because this is a global class that we're conducting, you can take that inspiration and then apply it to the people that you're working with in the particular areas that you live. And this way we can proliferate the Sankirtan movement with a proper understanding of Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. So I want to thank all of the people that are participating in the class. Personally, I'm very honored to be a part of this group and to have a chance to serve in this capacity with other people in this group to expand the mission of Lord Chaitanya in this medium. And we have other programs that we're working on. If any of you are interested in reaching out to participate in whatever way you feel you can for the Prabhupada TV, for the newsletters that we're planning to do, the other efforts that we're putting on, then please, by all means, reach out to myself, Viśvakarmā Das. I'm in Canada here, actually in Hamilton, Ontario. And you can reach me on the Prabhupada Disciples Association Facebook group. And by the way, this group is expanding. Every day we get so many people coming to be a part of the group and getting information about the philosophy through different posts that people are providing to our group. And there's an abundance of information online on Krishna Consciousness. We're trying to monitor it carefully to make sure that all of you get really nectarine information on the philosophy to help you in your daily activities, your daily practice of devotional service. Remember, it is a struggle to stay Krishna conscious. It's not that it's an automatic, you just turn on the button and then you're going. It is a process that requires a lot of focus, a lot of effort, just like anything in life, whether you want to be a doctor or an engineer or a sports hero or a musician or whatever field that you're in, it takes a lot of focus to be able to get to an understanding of this expertise in that particular field. And in the same way, the science of self-realization, which is a lifetime effort to practice, it takes a lot of focus and association. So that's the function of the Prabhupada Disciples Group. So we appreciate, we're expanding. We're over 600 members now. And we continue to develop this group and these other programs moving forward. So again, thank you everybody, and stay steady with the ship. We're getting better as the days go on. We're working at this. You know, we're not super expert at this point, but once you start something, then you have a chance to improve it. If you don't start anything, whether it's a program for yourself or it's a program for others, unless you start something, you can't make it better. So we apologize to everyone if we're not meeting the high standards that we expect to achieve, but we are working on it. So if you have any input, any positive input for us to help us to become better in what we're doing, please, by all means, reach out to me, and I'll try to introduce it to our group in a polite and courteous manner so that we can continue this building of the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya. So we're going to move forward in the program and ask Vinkat to please play the Jai Radha Madhava Kirtan of Prabhupada. This was a process that we learned in the early years of how to conduct a class. Prabhupada introduced this system. And then after that, we'll have our guest speaker, Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, deliver the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam class for everyone's benefit. Hari, Hari Bol.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Yasoda-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasoda-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasoda-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasoda-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Viśvakarmā Prabhupāda Swami Prabhupāda Canto names of the whole Sri Krishna Śrīla Krishna Bhagavatam Sam Radha Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadvip Dham ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Delhi Bhagavatams ki jai, Swami Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the All glories to the Thank you very much.
Om
Yasoda-
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Cheva Narottamam. Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Tato Jayam Mudirayet. One should utter the means of conquest, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, after offering respectful obeisances, 1. To the personality of Godhead Narayana, 2. To the Narayana Rishi, who is the supermost human being, 3. To the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, then 4. To Śrīla Vyasadeva, the author. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 19 describes the effect of reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Tadarajastamo bhava kama lobhadayasyaye chitayite ranaviddham stitam sattve prasidati. As soon as irrevocable loving service is fixed in one's heart, at that time the effects of the nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankerings, etc., do disappear from one's heart, and he becomes fixed up in the mode of goodness, which makes him completely happy. Today we'll be reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, text number 7, if I'm not mistaken here, or text number 8.
No, 7.
7? Okay. All translations, synonyms, and purports by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, also known as the Krishna Consciousness Movement. All the readings are read from the 1962 original edition of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Yani Vidavidam Srishtu Bhagavan Badarayana Anyecha Munaya Sutta Paravara Vidu Viduhu. Yani, all that. Vedavidam, scholars of the Vedas. Srishtu, senior most. Bhagavan, incarnation of Godhead. Badarayana, Vyasadeva. Anye, others. Cha, and. Munaya, the sages. Sutta, O Sutta Goswami. Paravara Vidu, amongst the learned scholars, one who is conversant with physical and metaphysical knowledge. Vidu, one who knows. Translation, the senior most learned Vedantist, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead, as well as with other sages who are fully conversant in all kinds of physical and metaphysical learnings. Purport by Śrīla Prabhupāda. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the natural commentation of the Brahma Sutra, or the Badarayani Vedanta Sutra. It is natural because Vyasadeva is author of both the Vedanta Sutras as well as Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the essence of all Vedic literatures. Besides Vyasadeva, there are other sages who are the authors of 6 different philosophical systems. They are Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Patanjali, Jaimini, Ashtavakra, etc. Theism incomplete is explained in the Vedanta Sutra, whereas in other systems of philosophical speculations, practically no importance has been awarded to the ultimate cause of all causes. One is they're expected to sit on Vyasasana after being conversant with all systems of philosophy so that one can present fully the theistic views of Bhagavat in defiance of all other systems. Śrīla Sutta Goswami was the right type of teacher, and therefore the sages at Naimisharanya elevated him on the seat of Vyasasana. Śrīla Vyasadeva is designated herein as personality of Godhead because he's the authorized in-power incarnation of the personality of Godhead. Vitatvam somyatat sarvam tatvata tadanugrahat bruyuhu snigdasya sishyasya guravo guhyamapyuta. Veta, you are well conversant. Tvam, your honor. Saumya, one who is pure and simple. Tat, those. Saravam, all. Tatvata, in fact. Tat, there. Anugrahat, by the favor of. Shishyasya, of the disciple. Snigdasya, of the one who is submissive. Guravo, of the spiritual masters. Apiyutam, endowed with. Translation by His Divine Grace. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors of the spiritual masters for gentle disciples. As such, you can let us know all that you learned from them scientifically. Purport by Śrīla Prabhupāda. The secret of success in the spiritual advancement of knowledge is to satisfy the spiritual master and thereby to get his sincere blessings. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has sung in his famous 8 stanzas on the spiritual master as follows. I do offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of spiritual master, whose satisfaction alone can please the personality of Godhead, and whose dissatisfaction alone can play a havoc on the path of spiritual realization. It is essential, therefore, that a disciple must be very much obedient and submissive to the bona fide spiritual master. Srila Sutta Goswami fulfilled all these conditions in the relation of a disciple and the spiritual master, and therefore he was endowed with all the favors of the learned and self-realized spiritual master like Srila Vyasadeva and others. The sages of the Naimisharanya were confident about the qualities of Srila Sutta Goswami, and therefore they were anxious to hear from him. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namaum Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Desatarine Bhakti Siddhanta Shishyaya Bhaktivedanta Namine Prasannaya Prashantaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Bhagavad Vandanam Khadyam Guru Vandana Purvakam Kshiram Sarkara Yuktam Kadatihi Visheshataham Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So these 2 verses are very important. Why? Because here Prabhupada is explaining the exalted position of Sutta Goswami. Very special position that all the great sages came to him and they requested him to explain. They say, explain to us what you ascertain to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general, out of your considered and made easy opinion. So Śrīla Prabhupada is very, very nicely and kindly explaining all of these points. We have already discussed in these previous verses, also in text number 7, who is qualified to sit on the Vyasasana. Prabhupada explains, one is there expected to sit on Vyasasana after being conversant with all the systems of philosophy, so that one can present fully the theistic views of Bhagavat in defiance of all other systems. So this is not a cheap position that anyone can jump on a trampoline and sit on a Vyasasana, as it is commonly done, especially in India, with so many questionable yogis and swamis and gurus and everything. In this particular line, in this disciplic succession, the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, as most recently explained by His Divine Grace Śrīla Prabhupāda, the teachings have to be explained and understood according to the original instructions, directives, and books, unrevised, unadulterated books of Śrīla Prabhupada. We were discussing yesterday how so many great acharyas have written commentaries on the scriptures. They've written these commentaries. Why? Why have they taken the trouble to go through all of the different shastras and making these elaborate explanation and notes so that people in the future, devotees like us, sadhakas and practitioners, could get the benefit of these wonderful explanations and revelations? I've often told this story how one senior disciple of His Divine Grace once asked Śrīla Prabhupada, of all the things you've taught, what is the most important? And Prabhupada replied by quoting this verse from the Shveta Upanishad, Yasya Devi Parabhakti Riyata Devi Tata Guru Tasyeti Katita Yartaha Prakashante Mahatmanaha. That for those who have firm faith in Krishna and the bona fide Acharya, for those, all the imports of Vedic literatures is revealed. Prakashante Mahatmana. This is not an academic process of study, or simply study is required also, but this is not in a mundane sense a process of research and study. No, this is a process of revelation. So many times we have explained, and Prabhupada has explained, that one cannot obtain the absolute truth simply by study. One can study the Vedas. That is not sufficient. We see in the Brahma Samhita, or Lord Brahma explains that only those who are simply premanjana churiti bhakti vilochanena santa sadeva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam shyama sundaramachintya gunaswarupam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. That for those who are basically devotees, engaged in this path of devotion, premanjana bhakti, that disengage in this path of devotional service under the guidance of the bona fide realized Acharya, pure devotee Acharya, Uttamadhikari Acharya, Maha-Bhagavata Acharya. For those who are on the guidance of such a spiritual master, then everything can be understood properly. We sing every day in a Sri Guru Charana Padma that Janme Janme Prabhu se Divya Gyan Hride Prakashito. The Divya Gyan, this transcendental knowledge, is manifested, Prakashito. The same Sanskrit word is there from the Shvetashvara Upanishad, Prakashante Mahatmanaha, Hride Prakashito. It is given in the heart. How? Janme Janme Prabhu se, for those who accept the Acharya birth after birth. In this life, in this chance, we've had the opportunity to come in contact with such an exalted soul, Śrīla Prabhupada. So we have to take advantage by engaging in the Shravanam Kirtanam. Otherwise, if we don't do the Shravanam Kirtanam on the basis of Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, by nature's arrangement, somebody will be forced to do Shravanam Kirtanam of so many different topics. You know, you can go to so many places. I used to work in the legal field, and where one of the offices I was working, there was a big newsstand. And it went on for about 200 feet on a street corner. The owner of this newsstand had managed to have a very long 200 feet, and they had magazines, booklets, and books of every topic: cinema, sports, politics, painting, different kind of hobbies, so many different topics, not related to Krishna. But it says if one is not engaged in Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, one will engage in Shravanam Kirtanam of Maya topics. That is very dangerous, because at the time of death, sada tad bhava bhavitaha, whatever one will think, that will be the next destination. So one has to practice and control the mind, to engage the mind in hearing topics of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. This is very important. Now, how do we get this favor of the Acharya? This is explained in text number 8. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors of the spiritual masters for gentle disciples. Prabhupada describes in a purport a very important point, because sometimes devotees will ask, what is the secret of success? How do we achieve success? Prabhupada explains here, the secret of success in the spiritual advancement of knowledge is to satisfy the spiritual master and thereby to get his sincere blessings. Just like we discussed yesterday. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado, yasya aprasadat nagati kutopi. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Prabhupada explains here, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has sung in his famous 8 stanzas on the spiritual master as follows. I do offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of spiritual master, whose satisfaction alone can please the personality of Godhead, and whose dissatisfaction alone can play a havoc on the path of spiritual realization. It is essential, therefore, that a disciple must be very much obedient and submissive to the bona fide spiritual master. So this is a very important point. One cannot rebel against the authority of the Acharya. One cannot challenge the authority of the Acharya. One cannot disobey the directives and orders of the Acharya, thinking himself more intelligent. In 1976, there was a big disturbance when Śrīla Prabhupada found out that one of his disciples, a Sanskrit scholar, left the movement, and he had written a letter requesting Prabhupada to give him his blessing so he could find a real guru. And Prabhupada's reply basically said, well, if I'm not a real guru, why do you want my blessings? This is the effect of the contamination of insubordination, rebellion. This is due to envy against the Acharya. Very dangerous position. Very dangerous position. We see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, our Krishna Das explains how the order of the spiritual master and very strong cannot be disobeyed. And he gives the example of the story of Renuka and Parashuram. Janmadagni, the father of Parashuram, told Parashuram that you should kill your mother because she had gone to the river and she had lusted over a Gandharva. So Jamadagni told Parashuram, his son, you kill your mother. And he did not hesitate to follow the order of his father, his guru. So then he asked his father for a blessing. You give me a blessing, you revive her, give her back her life. And Prabhupada explains that this is example how the order of the spiritual master is very strong. It may seem very contradictory because we see in the Shastras, for example, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, how one should respect his mother, Acharya Devo Baba, Matri Devo Baba, Pitri Devo Baba. One should respect his mother and father like God. Not that they are gods, but she should be very respectful. So this point is very important. So how can one ask to kill his mother? But the point was being made to follow the order of the spiritual master. So that rebellious disciple displeased Śrīla Prabhupada very much. And Prabhupada in one lecture said, even if one thinks that he has become more learned than the spiritual master, and I remember this lecture, I was sitting close to the Vyasasana in Vrindavan, and Prabhupada laughed. He says, of course, that is not possible. But even if you think like that, you should be respectful to the spiritual master. So this is a very important point. One should never defy or disregard the order of the spiritual master, or start to interpret things in a way for sense gratification. There's one very famous letter where Śrīla Prabhupada is expressed that everybody should be very careful in their dealings with the spiritual master. Very, very careful. Prabhupada says that I'm always afraid of this great crack. And he was referring to different interpretations by disciples of his Guru Maharaj about the words of his Guru Maharaj, Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. People who interpreted his instructions for sense gratification. So this is a very important point, because we have seen and experienced how some ambitious persons will often tend to interpret Prabhupada's words in a convenient way for their own sense gratification, for their own personal ambition. One devotee recently called me from India, and he's asked me why so many disturbances are there. Why are there so many different views and opposing points amongst the disciples of Swami Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada? And my reply is, those who are real followers of Prabhupada, they don't have that problem. Those who are pretending to be followers, but have ulterior motives for the pod problem. When I say pod problem, I'm not referring to the Prabhupada Anti-Defamation Association, PADA. I'm referring to PAD, Profit, Adoration, and Distinction. For those who are not contaminated with that, it is not difficult to understand the instruction of the spiritual master. Yasya Devi Parabhaktir Yata Devi Tata Guru. One has to see what is the real motivation. What are people trying to promote? Are they really trying to promote Śrīla Prabhupada and his original teachings? Or are they trying to promote themselves? Are really trying to follow Śrīla Prabhupada as he wanted, or trying to manufacture different interpretations and fabrications? This is important. Just like in different sampradayas, all these acharyas, they have different mantras they give to their disciples and followers. We have all heard the story of Ramanujacharya, who received a mantra from his guru. And his guru told him, this mantra is very powerful. Whoever hears this mantra will be liberated. Ramanujacharya went to the top of the temple. It was screaming the mantra to everybody. Because in Vedic culture, you're not supposed to do things like that. The mantra is supposed to be received from the acharya and chanted silently. I'm referring to the Gayatri mantras here. So are we to conclude that Ramanujacharya, the exalted acharya, was deviating? That he was not following the tradition? We cannot judge the exalted activities of the acharya, thinking or criticizing, oh, this is not in a tradition, that is not in a tradition. This is nonsense. A disciple should never challenge the arrangement of his spiritual master. Never do that. Prabhupada left very clear, specific, direct instructions of how to conduct the activities of his movement. for the aftermath of his departure. The problem is self-interested, ambitious persons disobeyed his instructions. That is the root cause of the chaos. Śrīla Prabhupada once wrote a letter, if there is any problems in our society, it means that the instructions of the spiritual master are being neglected, are being disobeyed. It is not very complicated. It is not very difficult. When I first came in contact with the devotees in the mid-1960s, one devotee named Sripati, he explained to me at one point, the four regular principles, the principle of no gambling, also imply no mental speculation. We hear from the Acharya, Śrīla Prabhupada. We follow the Acharya, Śrīla Prabhupada. We do not manufacture our own interpretation. This is what the great sages of Naimisharani are doing here. They're not inventing something. They're not manufacturing anything. They're submissively requesting Sutta Goswami to explain things very nicely. So this is a very important point. Very important point. Okay, we'll open up discussions, comments, remarks, questions. Hare Krishna. Gauramani, do you have a question? Comment? We cannot hear you.
Not at the moment. Not at the moment.
Oh, very good. Okay, Hare Krishna.
It's very clear what you are saying.
What about what Prabhupada is saying? What is Prabhupada saying?
What about Prabhupada saying?
About what we're reading. What is Prabhupada saying? What we are reading today. What is Prabhupada saying?
That is important to follow the instruction of the spiritual master. To be, yes, I mean, with no deviation, and because if we want to have success in life, we have to follow the instruction of the spiritual master.
Very good. Very important point. Thank you, Gauramani. Thank you. Bhakta Ulysses, you have a point. Hare Krishna. Go ahead, Bhakta Ulysses.
Can you hear me now? Hare Krishna?
Yes, we can hear you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, a little glitch. Please accept my humble obeisances. Regarding the topic of the instructions of the spiritual master, there's a discussion about the 50% Varnashram, because there's no recording or letter where he said that. As far as I know, it was only mentioned to a few disciples. And I was wondering if it was published or in any way publicly distributed. This 50% of my mission is Varnashram.
That's a very good question, Ulysses. I think I've told the story a few times that this instruction was given by His Divine Grace in the last few months of his manifested presence in 1977. I have heard personally from Hamsuduta where Prabhupada told him exactly that same instruction. I was there personally in 1977, in August of 77, along with the late secretary, where Prabhupada called us into his room and told us that statement that I've done 50% of my work by writing my books. The other 50% is the introduction of this Varnashram, and Prabhupada defined it at the time as self-sufficient farms and organizing society amongst different classes. But we have to bear in mind, although it has never been published or recorded, there's no reason to believe that this was not a bona fide instruction. The devotees have come to realize, one thing we have to understand, when we're dealing with Śrīla Prabhupada, technically is called Trikalagnya, somebody who knew past, present, and future. besides being a pure devotee, he was also an accomplished, perfect yogi who knew what would happen in the future. What we're now seeing in human society with so many social disturbances and so many things, Prabhupada could see that 50 years ago. He could understand that these things were going to happen. And that's one of the reasons why Śrīla Prabhupada said, get some land, grow some crop, get some cow, become more self-sufficient, and preach like that, along with the other preaching methods that he gave. So that instruction is very important, very, very important. And there are many devotees, such as your good self in Mexico, trying to follow that instruction to the best of their ability, trying to move forward. I know that there's many devotees. I know in the western part of the United States, one devotee named Damagosh, another one named Narasimha. Different other devotees are doing these Varnashram projects, developing land, growing crops, protecting cows. There's a lot of different devotees in many places doing this. It is not simply that because some people in the official institution have neglected that instruction does not necessarily imply that everybody has neglected that instruction. No, there are many people who are following that instruction, and this is Śrīla Prabhupāda's desire, and we very much like to promote that. Yes, Venkat, you raise your hand. Go ahead, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I had a question kind of related. Recently I found a quote. It was shared on WhatsApp, and it confused me a little bit. It's a quote. It's a letter by Prabhupada to someone, and I don't know the context of what the question to Prabhupada was, but this was his reply. The communal form of Krishna consciousness, which you mention, is not approved by me. It is all concoction. My Guru Maharaj condemned this practice. We must stay together and vigorously preach the Krishna consciousness philosophy to the world. That is the real spirit of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Do not fall victim to this sentimental idea of peaceful life in seclusion. That is not our dharma. So it seems like Prabhupada is saying, don't go, to a secluded place and communal form, like with a group of devotees, and live just by yourself. So I wanted to figure out, how to understand this.
What is the date of this letter?
This is 1973, December 13th.
Okay. Well, Śrīla Prabhupada gave many different instructions at different points in time. And many times as years went on in the later years, he clarified those instructions or gave more specific instruction. What Prabhupada is referring to in that letter is people becoming bhajananandis or living in seclusion to practice Krishna consciousness separately and not preaching. When Prabhupada said the other 50% of his preaching mission is Varnashram, it does not mean that the preaching or distributing of books or chanting should stop. That is not what he meant. He meant that this endeavor should be there, this emphasis should be there, but not that the other very important activities like book distribution, deity worship, and everything else should be stopped or curtailed. That is not the understanding. That is not the correct understanding. Yes, Viśvakarmā, you raised your hand.
Thank you very much. I wanted to make a comment on the position of Śrīla Prabhupada and why he is seen as a pure devotee of Krishna. Because there are so many different gurus that claim that a role as a representative of God. And sometimes people are deceived by their claims. Like, for example, there is this Sadguru. Now, Sadguru is a very popular person in the world of spirituality. He has millions and millions of followers, and he's built all kinds of facilities for his work, whatever it is, I'm not sure. But nonetheless, he has achieved a high level of success in the material world. So the question is, well, how is it that Prabhupada is different than Sadhguru? And if you listen to him, you'll be able to make a distinction between both parties. It is apparent that he does not explain the science of Krishna to people. Who is God? How God is, that Krishna is residing in the spiritual world, Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, simultaneously one and different. He's residing in the spiritual world, and he's also expanded himself throughout the universe as the super soul, residing in everyone's heart, who's present everywhere. So Prabhupada has articulated, not only in his lectures and his letters and his conversations from morning walks, but more specifically in his books. These books, Prabhupada presented Krishna consciousness in the most intelligent manner, which is the presentation of his books, which are, Prabhupada explained, would be the law books for mankind coming forward into the future. So he very articulately explains the science of Krishna consciousness logically in the presentation of his books. If you look at the Bhagavad Gita as it is, it's an amazing literature, transcendental literature, giving us deep insight into the actual meaning of the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. That's why it's called the Bhagavad Gita, but Prabhupada introduced the term as it is. It's not the Bhagavad Gita as it is, isn't the original title of the Gita. The Gita, the Bhagavad Gita as it is what does the as it is mean? Well, the as it is means that Prabhupada's explained what the actual meaning of Gita is, which is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if you want to understand the Gita properly, you need the association of a pure devotee. And in this particular case, we're very fortunate that Prabhupada presented the Bhagavad Gita as it is so that we could all understand the real meaning of the Bhagavad Gita as Krishna spoke it. So the reason that Prabhupada is the pure devotee of Krishna is by his work, by his actions. It's not by any other any other reason than Prabhupada has done the work. Like, people can talk. Everybody likes to talk. I'm this, I'm that. They can go out and give lectures. But to actually produce these books, and Prabhupada spent a greater part of his life focused on working on this goal, like we're reading right now from the Bhagavatam, 62 version. Now, what does that tell everybody in the class here? Well, it tells you Prabhupada was thinking about, not only thinking about this, he was doing it moving forward in his life. if you look back at the old BTGs and the League of Devotee releases that he did, they're wonderful explanations of the science of Krishna consciousness as he learned from his spiritual master, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. So his particular position is established by his work. How much work he put into creating this tremendous books of Krishna consciousness for the benefit of the human society moving forward. So you judge a person by his actions, not by his words. What he does, just like people in different fields, as I mentioned, they do great things because they're disciplined. They're very disciplined. Prabhupada was very, not only was he disciplined, he was a great adventurer. Think about it. Prabhupada gets on a boat. Now, how many people were with him in Calcutta when he got on the boat? Well, there was only one person that saw him off. One of his sons came with him to the boat. He went on his own. There was nobody there. This story of Śrīla Prabhupāda's life is not a regular story of greatness. This is a story of an extremely devoted person who took the order of his spiritual master to heart and sacrificed everything. He put everything on the line to spread the mission of Lord Chaitanya. And he set the highest example. When you read the pastimes of Prabhupada in New York City, all the difficulties that he went through to be able to establish a movement, all the people that he brought in that were, some were qualified, some were unqualified, all the difficulties, all the austerity that he went through. And when you read the story, you can realize this is not an ordinary person. Krishna consciousness was brought to the Western world by somebody extremely, extremely extraordinary on all levels. And he showed it by the work he did. It's not just words, it's actually surrender. If we want to make advancement in Krishna consciousness, we have to understand how to follow his example and how to surrender. For example, money. Prabhupada had no interest in money. You should know that. He had no interest in titles. For example, when Prabhupada came to Toronto, now we undertook to buy this church back then in 1976. Actually, we started looking for the building. Prabhupada had come in 75, and the church people invited us to come and look at, the real estate agent invited us to come and see the building. For some of you, if you're not familiar, the church in Toronto that we purchased is right up from the Parliament buildings. Just imagine. We were living in a rented house in the slum area of Toronto, and all of a sudden, my godbrother at the time had found this building, so we went there to see the building, and we went as a group, so it was all of us, and Prabhupada was with us. He had come in 75, so we all went to see this church. We go to see the church, we get out of the car, there are pictures of us there walking up to the church. Beautiful pictures of us getting out of the car. Now we're all in dhotis, we're all in kurtas, our heads are shaved. We looked like people from another planet for most of these people, for the Christians. The church was owned by a Christian denomination. the Missionary Alliance, it was called. It was, and it had been operated by a guy, Charles Templeton and Pierre Burton. They were big celebrities in the media here in Canada. And the church was in a prominent location. It's called the Gateway to Toronto. Now, Toronto is a big city. Don't kid yourself. So there's a road called Avenue Road that comes down from the 401, and there are two churches just south there. Oh, look at that beautiful picture of and the sign, the Hare Krishna temple. So I love that sign. Oh my God, that's fantastic. Vinkat, thank you. It brings ecstasy to me. There's a great story behind that sign and the instructions that Prabhupada gave us to put the sign up. So it's part of the gateway to Toronto. So when the people in the church saw us come up to the building, they literally almost passed out. They were so shocked. And so we went through a tour of the building with Prabhupada. We went through the temple, and Prabhupada was very enlivened. Think about it. He starts this movement in 1966. All of a sudden, here we are. He's on the verge of getting this big building for Krishna Consciousness. We had a big Indian community developing in Toronto. So we thought, okay, if we get this building, then it'll service that community and everyone else. It'll be a prominent building. When we got home back to the Gerrard Street Temple, and Prabhupada was staying on the Pembroke Street, which is a slummy, at the time was a slummy street. He was staying in one of the apartments of our grihastas because he didn't want to be away from us. He wasn't interested in staying at the Royal York Hotel or some fancy accommodation. He was much more interested in just being with his disciples. So we were in the room with him, and he had called up the BBT in LA, and he got a Romeshwar on the phone, and he said, gave direction to Jagadish at the time to make an offer to the church. They were asking $500,000 for the church. Back then, it was a lot of money. Nowadays, you can't even buy a shack in Toronto for $500,000. But anyway, Prabhupada called up the BBT, and he asked Romeshwar how much money he had in his bank account. And Romeshwar told him $300,000. So he gave an instruction to Jagadish to make an offer to the church, write up an offer, and make an offer to the church to buy the church for $300,000. And the answer that came back was, we would rather burn the church down than sell it to the Hare Krishna movement. Oh. So what happened was no deal. And the church we forgot about the idea of getting the church because, we had no money at the time. Prabhupada was prepared to give the money, but they refused to sell it to A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. They had met him, no way. Now, there's a greater story that I will relate in the future on how we undertook as our group in Toronto to move forward. In the following year, we bought the temple for His Divine Grace as our service to him. And he said, when he sent us a letter, he said, "This is a topmost triumph that you've achieved for Krishna." So this greatness of Śrīla Prabhupada, the greatness of His Divine Grace to be able to see into the future, to be able to develop Krishna consciousness with his devotees, is a demonstration of his greatness as a pure devotee of Krishna. He did amazing things. It's not just a person speaking words of wisdom. It is a person that's demonstrated. He demonstrated his greatness in spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. He bought it. He bought a skyscraper building in New York City. That's not a small thing. He did this, he did that, he produced all these books. That's why Prabhupada is demonstrated that he is the pure devotee, representative of Krishna. And we are all very fortunate, even to this day, 2022, to be in association with each other with this same understanding that Prabhupada is the pure devotee, empowered by Krishna to take us all back home, back to Godhead. This is something Sadhguru and these other bogus gurus cannot do. This is the reality of this, and the excitement of then and now is still amongst all of us. So all glories to Śrīla Prabhupada and the Sankirtan mission. Bala Ganesh has his hand up. Please, your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yeah, Dandavat Pranam. So, Hare Krishna, Dandavat. Yeah, my question is, Prabhu, so you discussed that, okay, we, whoever sits on Vyasasana need to have a complete knowledge in all the 6 systems of philosophy and all that. So, and I heard that from Prabhupada, he wrote many letters and he had a desire to, desire for an institution, education institution, and he can give degrees of bhakti to become a bona fide preacher of his institution. So my question is, Prabhu, so how much Prabhupada is emphasized on this examinations and degrees, and to have a degrees on preaching, so that they all can have a place where they can dedicatedly study and preach.
Okay, I'll give the answer. Are you referring to academic degrees?
Yes, Prabhu. Not academic degrees in sense like Prabhupada instituted a system of Bhakti Sastri, Bhakti Vaibhav.
Oh, that.
That kind of, yes, Prabhu.
Okay, that's different. This process of following the spiritual master, this is also very important. The reason that that you're being tested is to help us, as individual devotees, understand this philosophy so that we're qualified to go out and present it to others. So it's more important. It's a combination of many things, Prabhu. It is a combination of your devotional service, what you do every day with your time. It's a combination of your study. It's a combination of your rounds. It's part of your following the regulated process. It's a complete package. So Prabhupada demonstrated how to practice Krishna consciousness practically every day with the use of his time. And then he was inspiring us to follow the same process so that we would also manifest the qualities of devotees through the practice of following him in his example of serving Krishna. Okay, so it's a science. You're following in the footsteps of the spiritual master. That's what you're doing. You're following in his footsteps. You're carefully doing that. And then hopefully Krishna, by your sincerity, will reveal the absolute truth to you. Who is the Guru and who is Krishna? Anyone else? Ulysses, you have another question.
Hare Krishna. Yes. In the purport of the verse, we were reading about the same 6 other systems of philosophy. And as far as I know, in Vedanta Sutra, these systems are debunked or explained and why they're flawed. Does that mean we need to study them, at least in summary?
No, it's not necessary to study them right now. I wanted to ask you a question if I could. Have you read all of Prabhupada's books yet?
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Have you read them all?
Yes.
Okay, so you've at least, and you understand them.
Hopefully, yes.
Well, my recommendation is just, I don't want to criticize anyone for anything they've done, but I would say this, that at this particular stage of your devotional service, just keep studying them, keep chanting your rounds and following the regulated principles, and let Krishna consciousness develop further and further within you, and you become empowered to represent our Guru properly. These other books are not so necessary right now for you. Okay? I hope that's fair. I just feel that's what we're doing, and it would be in your best interest to do the same thing. Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu?
Yes, I think this question is very important. I've had different devotees ask these kind of questions. When we study Śrīla Prabhupāda's books, he explains the essence of the complete knowledge of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. That there's no need to go into a separate study of Patanjali or Kannada or Gautama. All of these various philosophies are explained in Prabhupada's books and Prabhupada's purports, and the proper understanding of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, of the conclusion of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, is given. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a verse which describes from the Garuda Purana how the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the natural commentary on Vedanta Sutra. So when we study the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam or Prabhupada's purports in the Chaitanya Charita, this is the explanation of the various philosophies and the correct understanding of Bhagavat philosophy. So everything is explained in the books properly. Can't hear you.
Another question. I'm trying to understand how Prabhupada planned the social distribution. Like he wanted, and I don't know, 80% of the devotees living in the farm or in the country, or 90%, or half in the city and half in the country. So what is the proportion that he was aiming for?
Well, Śrīla Prabhupada made different statements at different times. Like there is one letter, when conversation with, they were asking Prabhupada, should the householders go there to the farms? Prabhupada said everyone. Another time he made some recommendation that there should be preaching centers in the cities where some book distribution can go on, and then the preaching can still go on. But Prabhupada's idea was to develop these farm projects so that eventually the women, the children, the devotees would go there and grow communities. Now, unfortunately, it has not turned out this way for various reasons, which we've discussed several times. But what we know is that Prabhupada wanted that system. As far as an exact percentage of devotees, I don't recall Prabhupada making any statements about which percentage of devotees. But the reality is that when we live in cities, sometimes it's not so easy to get out of your apartment or your house and say, that's it, I'm leaving to the country. I mean, there were various projects in the society after Prabhupada departed, and many of these projects basically ended up in failures where they lost the land or sold the land. There are many such projects, but it's never, everybody can, if they like, if they're serious, can get some land or get out of the cities and make progress. Grow some crops like that. This can be done anywhere in the world. Not everybody lives in cities. I mean, I know many countries in South America, not everybody lives in the cities. There are many people that live in the countryside and different rural areas. Same thing in America. Same thing in India. That is a natural way of living, simple living and high thinking. That is what Prabhupada was recommending. Hare Krishna.
I wanted to mention too, Bhakti Ulysses, this point. You're speaking about management, correct? How to manage a society. So this is one aspect of Krishna consciousness, which is how to utilize the resources of the material world for providing community atmosphere for people in Krishna consciousness, etc. Now, in our particular situation, the most important thing is not so much management of society, but management of yourself. In other words, you have 24 hours in the day, Prabhu, to do things. Like everything, it moves both by rising and setting of the sun. It decreases the duration of life of everyone except those who utilize the time in discussing the transcendental pastimes, the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I think for all of us here, we're looking at self-development as the issue. That is really the issue. Like how many hours you're spending studying the books, chanting your rounds, doing all of the administrative duties that you require to maintain your life, your family, if you're married, etc. So what we should look at is our individual effort right now to move forward with the development of our own Krishna consciousness. That personal management is the key to development. Ulysses, you keep asking all these questions. I hope that other people don't feel deprived.
It's just in reply what you're mentioning, because we're already in the farm. We have a beautiful place. We have mineral spring water, pure air, fresh milk. Already have all the good things in life, and I already fully engaged in devotional service. But I see devotees in the city; they're suffering like crazy. They're not peaceful, and it's like it's painful for me to just remain here, like we were saying before, just bhajan and Nandi. So therefore, I'm interested in inviting others, and I share videos how to do it and how to be happy in a simple living environment. That's my interest. As many times we have received devotees as guests. They come and they come here like if it was Disneyland. They see cows and they think there's nice animals, a peacock and a cow. And then they go back to the city. they don't show any interest in escaping the city. On the contrary, they like the city. They want to go back. And to me, that's not a very good standing. I should have a list of 100 people wanting to come here, but right now that list is 0. So yeah,
it's a problem. It's a real problem to figure out how to do this. So I mean, just keep working at it. I think in due course it'll unfold for you, because the circumstances are that the material society that we do live in is deteriorating. And especially in the cities. For example, in Canada here in Toronto, if a person wants to live in the city, do you know how much they have to pay to get a 1-bedroom apartment? $2,000 a month for just a 1-bedroom apartment. I have a bhakta that I'm working with in Toronto. I'm trying to talk him into maybe switching, even coming here to the Hamilton program that we have at our ashram. He just can't seem to give it up. So he's prepared to suffer and work like a madman to try to live for whatever reason in the Toronto environment, because it's the big city. So these types of things are going on. It's a struggle to get people. But at the same time, I think if you just carry on, keep keep going. Krishna will eventually help you, and Krishna will provide people. Just like with our program here, we started the program, it's been going on for some time, and now as we keep progressing, Krishna keeps sending some good people. I don't want to mention anyone because they get embarrassed, but at the same time, this is, Krishna acting, helping, working to expand the mission of Lord Chaitanya through the collection of devotees that are coming together to do that. So I'm optimistic that things will work out for you, that people will start to come and join you. Just keep going. Don't stop. Never give up. Yaśodā, please.
Yeah, this is a very important point of discussion because many devotees who live in cities, I mean, Prabhupada's idea was that the society which he established was going to develop this. Unfortunately, it did not turn out that way, especially in North America. But there are some hopes, some places where there are some hopes with different projects, even though these are individual projects. We do know that this was Prabhupada's desire. What you're doing there, Dr. Ulysses, is what Prabhupada wanted. Develop some land, develop the farm, some cows, and even though some devotees who live in the cities may not be able to appreciate, ultimately, there will be some, at some point in society, I'd like one conversation with Prabhupada says, you may not want to live those cities, but eventually some of these cities may be closed. And we see with talks of nuclear war, with war in certain areas, with so many social disturbances, very high cost of living in many places, it's becoming very, very difficult for people to function. So that, of course, we take shelter of the chanting, take shelter of the literature that Prabhupada has given. But the point is, if somebody have the facilities to go live in that kind of environment, they should take advantage of it. That's an important point, very important point. I think we're reaching close to the end of the class. Are there any other questions or significant points anybody would like to make before we conclude?
Prabhu, there was a question in the chat regarding, I think it was going back to the question by Balaganesh Prabhu regarding the Bhakti Shastri and Bhakti Vaibhav courses. So there's a letter by Prabhupada to Kirtanananda, and he says that we should open an institution like a Rupanuga Vidyapit, and that people who pass that course will be awarded Brahmin initiation. So there was that question. I guess is someone doing something like that now?
The reality is, during the manifested presence of Śrīla Prabhupada, Prabhupada wanted this to introduce these different examinations, but this was never factually introduced for various reasons and everything. This was Prabhupada's desire, but this does not mean that this meant automatically that somebody who would pass these tests became a Paramhamsa. Basically, it was a Shastric knowledge test to ensure that people who would receive Brahminical initiations would be able to understand the philosophy, understand the books, and be able to articulate the philosophy that Prabhupada gave. This is an important point. I mean, right now, I don't know what they're doing over there with regards to these different tests, but this was Prabhupada's original idea. But one thing is, that was never introduced, because sometimes people bring up the argument that Prabhupada wanted these tests, and he made a statement that by 1975, it is hoped that people would pass these tests would be able to initiate disciples. Well, by 1975, it did not happen. It was not introduced some way or other for various reasons, and I'm not trying to blame anybody. The reality is Prabhupada had many ideas, many plans for the expansion of his movement, and some way or other, some of these plans were not immediately manifested. They were not immediately introduced. They can be introduced in the future. It can be done properly, But right now, the society which he founded is in the midst of chaos and confusion because of various deviations and disobediences of Prabhupada's instruction. So we just have to follow his instruction to the best we can. Yes, Viśvakarmā, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Yaśodā-nandana, for a wonderful class today. And again, we want to remind you that our next class will be on Wednesday. This next week, the Chaitanya Charitamrita class will be held at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also that's in Canada or the United States. So you can adjust your time according to the zone you're in. And we'll carry on with the process of Sadhu Sangha, association with like-minded devotees in our efforts to propagate the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya and the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra as the means of going back to Godhead in the age of Kali. So Prabhu, Vinkat, if you could bring up the Kirtan, Hare Krishna Kirtan. We've reached the end of this session of Krishna Consciousness.
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you, everyone. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha, kripa sindhu bhayevacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavebhyo, namo namaha. Keep up the good work. Keep chanting your rounds. Back to home, back to Godhead. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.